Hey, I'm going to be going over fixing the SRS light on 8th generation Honda Civics. That includes 2006 through 2011 all models, except hybrids, as electronics in those models are different compared to other models. However, this information may still apply. Before we get started, as a disclaimer, I want to let you guys know that I am not a professional in SRS systems and take no responsibility for any damages you cause to your vehicle. The information that I will provide in this video is what I have learned from fixing the SRS light twice on my vehicle, both times for different reasons. So let's say, for example, you got into an accident and you had airbags deployed, but replacing just the airbags is not going to get rid of that SRS light. Even after having your airbags replaced, you still need to pull the codes to see if there's anything else in the system that's damaged. In an accident where airbags deployed, it's possible that an impact sensor was also damaged during the collision, and that's a reason why codes need to be pulled to verify whether or not the module is able to detect any faults in the system. One method to get your SRS light codes is to jump pins 9 and 4 on your data link connector, which is located underneath the dashboard on the driver's side. Another method to do this is to take it to a mechanic that has a scanner that is able to read codes from the SRS system, or if you have a scanner that is able to read codes from an SRS system, that would work as well. Regardless of what method you use to pull the code, once you have the code, use that to narrow down where your problem is. If you decide to jump pins 4 and 9 to get your SRS codes, it's really simple. After jumping pins 4 and 9, put your key in the on position and you will notice that the SRS light will turn on the dashboard and then turn back off. It will then be followed by a series of flashes. There is a couple of long flashes followed by a series of fast flashes. In a nutshell, the long flashes and the short flashes each represent a number. In my case, I get 5 long flashes followed by 4 short flashes. This is giving me code 54. There is a pause between each code, so after the fast flashes it will pause briefly and then move on to the next code. If there are no more codes after the pause, you will get 4 quick flashes and then it will go back to your first code. The first time the SRS light went off in my car was when my car slipped on some oil and I hit the curb hard. That caused the passenger curtain airbag and the passenger seat side airbag to deploy and caused the SRS unit to store a permanent code. In this case, the first thing I did was replace both of those airbags, the passenger curtain airbag and the passenger seat side airbag. If you're ever in a situation where the airbags deployed and you've already gone ahead and replaced them, resetting the SRS codes is not enough. Once it's been removed from the vehicle, you will then have to pay for an SRS reset service. What they do is they read the codes off the SRS module and they clear any hard codes for you and they ship it back to you without any hard codes. Unfortunately, hard codes you cannot reset even with a scanner tool. It has to be done using one of these paid services. The first time I used the service, I paid $40, shipped the module over to them. They got it back to me within the week. It's a really quick process. Look it up on eBay, do a quick Google search. There's plenty of people that offer this SRS reset service. I personally used my airbags. I found them on eBay. They took care of it for me and they had a very quick turnaround time. Once I received my module back from them, it was really straightforward. Plug the module back into the car, bolt it down, reset the SRS codes. In a nutshell, whenever an airbag gets deployed or a seatbelt tensioner gets deployed, that is considered a hard code, and that's not something you can reset on your own. Anything else, impact sensor, if it's damaged and gets replaced, that's something you can reset on your own. Alright, getting to the SRS module is really straightforward. First thing you want to do is remove the plastic bezel that goes around the shifter. That's that light gray piece of plastic. Just pull it up. It's got 4 clips. It will come off fairly easy. Next item you want to remove is the plastic where that shifter bezel clipped into. Lift from the back and pull towards you. That comes out fairly easy as well. Next item is removing that little pad that sits in the storage compartment. Will reveal 2 screws that are hidden under that little rubber pad. Go ahead and remove those 2 screws, and then you've got 2 more screws underneath where the shifter console used to be. So go ahead and pull off those 2 screws. It's going to be the outer screws, not the inner screws, as you can see in the diagram. And then the last item would be those 2 plastic clips. There's one more piece of plastic that needs to be removed that I forgot to mention, and that sits underneath the glove box on the passenger side. Again, it's just clips that hold it down, so pull it down and it'll release fairly easily. It's got 2 hooks on the bottom and a couple clips on the top. So that's all that's holding down the center console. To get it out, what I did was put my back seats down, and then you could slide the whole console towards the rear, towards the back seats. Makes it a lot easier, and then that'll give you access to the actual SRS module. Now the module is being held down by 3 T30 Torx screws, and those are kind of a pain in the butt to remove. So find whatever way you can to remove them. I personally just used a Torx bit, a T30 bit, and a really small 1/4 inch ratchet, and I was able to get it out that way. But it can be a little difficult to get it out. Just make sure you get the appropriate Torx bit so you don't strip out those bolts, because they're in a very uncomfortable position to get them out. The SRS module has 2 connectors going to it. There's a white tab on top of each connector. If you pull back on that white tab, it'll allow you to pull the whole connector back. If you have a Civic with the premium audio system, there will be 2 bolts that hold down an amplifier box. It sits right on top of the SRS module basically. Really easy to remove it. It's just those 2 bolts, and you can unclip those connectors from it as well. To reset the SRS fault codes, you need to get to the connector so you can jump the 2 wires. To get to the connector, you need to first remove the driver's lower dash trim, and that's just being held down by clips. So pull down on the lower clips, and then you could pull on the upper clips, and it will release the trim. Once that plastic trim has been removed, you want to look to the left side, and you'll see a couple of relays as well as a couple of green connectors and 1 yellow connector to the top left. That's the connector you're looking for. Unplug that yellow connector, and you're going to need to find something to jump those 2 wires. I just ended up using a paper clip, and that worked well. To reset the SRS fault codes on the module and clear the SRS light on the dashboard, jump those 2 pins and put the key in the on position. You will see the SRS light come on. As soon as it turns off, disconnect those 2 wires, and then you will see the light come back on. Once it comes back on, jump those 2 wires again and wait for the light to come off. Once it comes off, you can disconnect those 2 wires again, and the light should stay off. If the light comes back on, that means there is still a fault in the system and it needs to be repaired. With the key in the on position, the SRS module will run through and check every airbag and every sensor that is part of the system. If it doesn't detect any faults, the SRS light will turn back off. After that incident, I drove my car for several years, no problems, SRS light never came back on. Until one day that I was driving, the SRS light randomly came back on. I pulled the SRS codes and I got code 5-4, internal failure of SRS. After doing a bunch of research online, it appears that the SRS module had stopped communicating with my car and it was defective and needed to be replaced. So I went down to my local recycled parts junkyard and they were able to source another SRS module for me. They pulled it out of a 2008 Honda Civic, so same year as my vehicle, and they made sure to check that no airbags had been deployed on that vehicle. So once I received the SRS module from them, I went ahead, plugged it into my car, reset any stored fault codes that it had, and I noticed the SRS light went off, but it did blink twice. So with the car on, SRS light was off. However, after turning the ignition off and then back on, the SRS light came right back on. This was due to the replacement SRS module needing to be recalibrated with the seat weight sensor and the OPDS module. Since the SRS light was coming back on, I pulled the codes again and I was getting codes 85, 85, and 81. After doing a bunch of research, I found two people on two separate forums that were also getting the same codes and were experiencing a similar issue after having replaced the SRS module and making sure that no sensors and no airbags were damaged. I called up several dealerships and asked them if they could recalibrate the seat weight sensor for me, and they were charging around $140 to take care of this. Some dealerships were saying it would be 2 hours worth of labor. The average was around 1 hour, $140. Eventually, I found a mechanic that had a Matco Maximus scanner, and that was able to communicate with the SRS system on Hondas. So I had him recalibrate the weight sensor for me. He reset the SRS fault codes and he scanned for fault codes again once it was reset and none were found. SRS light turned back off and the problem was fixed. On average, for a seat weight sensor and OPDS module recalibration, expect to pay between $100 and $150. I personally paid $100 to get it recalibrated, and the process takes about an hour to get it done. Okay, I wanted to cover a couple notes on what I've learned on these last two times that I've had an SRS light come on the dashboard. The first thing would be that you must replace any airbag that has been deployed, any sensor that has been damaged, and any module that is no longer communicating. Codes for internal failure of the SRS unit could also represent that you have a problem with the charging system. So possibly you have a bad battery or a bad alternator that's not charging the battery properly and you're not getting 14 volts. This could also contribute to that code being set. So before you go ahead and replace your module, that's a simple test you can do with a multimeter to verify that your charging system is working properly in your car. If you did deploy airbags or a seatbelt pretensioner went off, remember that sets a hard code and you need to have the SRS module reset. So that's a paid service. If after replacing your airbags you're not sure if anything else is damaged, always check for fault codes in the SRS system. Again, that's something you can do on your own or have somebody scan the SRS codes for you. Doing it on your own is not ideal sometimes because it doesn't give you a explanation of what the code actually means, so you gotta go online and do some research on your own. So it's not ideal, but it will work. If you do end up resetting the SRS faults on your system and the light comes back on, remember this is due to there still being a fault in the system. In the description below, I will be providing a list of SRS codes and their explanation. However, it's not 100% accurate. In the event that you need to replace a seat airbag, remember to just replace the airbag only. Avoid replacing the entire seat because the seat contains the OPDS module and the seat sensor within it. If you replace the entire seat, it will require a recalibration of the OPDS unit and the seat sensor. The OPDS module and the seat sensor is only located on the passenger seat. The driver's seat does not have one. If you find yourself having to replace the SRS module, remember that it should be the exact same model number as the one that's currently in your vehicle, or at least be compatible with your car. Unfortunately, I was not able to get the exact same model number, but I checked online and it looked like that did work for my car. The original module on my car was 77960-SVA-A230-M1, and the replacement unit was a 77960-SVA-211-M1. And fortunately, the replacement module that I received from the junkyard did work with my vehicle, as it did come out of a 2008 Honda Civic as well. It just happened to be a different part number. The Matco Maximus scanner, Autel Elite, and most high-end scanners are able to calibrate the weight sensor and OPDS unit, which means you don't have to go to the dealership. If you are working with the SRS module and have to have it replaced or unplug it for whatever reason, never turn the car back on, because this will set a code on the body control module. In my case, I got code B1187, gauge control module, lost communication with the SRS unit. And again, this was due to me disconnecting the SRS module and turning the car on. So don't do this, because it will set a hard code on the BCM system and it will require a scanner to reset it. Again, I just want to reiterate this. I'm not a professional. These just happen to be two scenarios that I found myself in, and I was able to fix the SRS light on my vehicle. But essentially, the procedure is the same. You have to find whatever is damaged on the system or whatever's broken, clear your fault codes, and if all is good, the SRS light will remain off. Because there are several modules and sensors throughout the car, that means there can be different scenarios of what can go wrong, and it's impossible for me to cover every single one, but this should at least give you some information on how to resolve your issue. It will also require a lot of research from your end to find the solution to your problem, but these two items, pulling the SRS module and knowing how to reset it, should help out. Anyway, that wraps it up for this video. I hope this information at least helps out some of you guys. If you have any questions, put them down in the comment section. Also look in the description of this video for helpful links, some of the forums that helped me out, as well as some of the videos that I watched that helped me out. Anyway, you guys have a good day. If you guys enjoyed this video, or at least found it helpful, please do me a favor, hit the like button. There's going to be more car videos following. I own a 2008 Honda Civic. I do all the work myself, so I try to record some of the work that I do, some of the stuff that I think would be helpful to others. I've also got a 69 Camaro project going on, so definitely more content to come. And subscribe if you're looking forward to it. Peace.